So you want to move to Vancouver, BC, Canada, but you're like me and you really can't afford Vancouver. And you're talking to your friends and you do some research online and you pick out the perfect location to move to. Well, let me tell you, that's probably not where you're going to end up moving. And on top of that, you're likely going to end up in my market of Surrey. But I know, you have heard all about these other great areas, and you are dead set that you are going to move there. But it's not until you end up actually booking a call with me using the link right now down below in the description. And when you arrive, my team takes you out to view properties and neighborhoods that you finally realize, oh yeah, I'm not going to move to that perfect little neighborhood that my friends told me about, or an area that some little no-name media outlet awarded the perfect little tucked away gem of a community. Trust me, you will say no to Surrey, North Delta, and Langley. And then you will say yes to them, eventually. But in order for you to actually change your mind, well, you won't change your mind until later. But in this video, I'm going to share with you my top 5 most common places that people think they're going to move when moving to the Lower Mainland. And then they don't actually move there at all. And I'm going to share with you these top 5 places right after I ask you to subscribe to the channel to get informed about the Surrey and Fraser Valley Marketplace. And please go ahead and click the like button, because you clicking the like button will help this video get out to even more people who are thinking about moving here to BC, and them seeing this video will hopefully help them skip the steps of visiting all of these areas that I'm going to talk about today, just to end up coming to the realization that they won't move to those areas. Now, let me start with the fact that yes, some people do end up obviously moving to these cities in the top 5 list. I'm not trying to say that these are bad areas or that you shouldn't move to them. Quite frankly, they're very, very good areas. But what I do know is that these areas likely don't contain the romanticized properties that you have made up in your mind. And in my experience, most people change their mind after they view these areas in person and after we show them options in other spots. And once they compare those options in other areas to the properties that both fit their budget and lifestyle, again, they usually don't end up in these 5 spots like they thought they would. And with that disclaimer out of the way, let's start off with the first area everyone wants to move to, but usually doesn't, and that's Ladner. Now, Ladner itself is not a city. Ladner is kind of a town within the corporation of Delta. So generally speaking, Delta is a big area, but generally speaking, Delta consists of Tsawwassen, which is further south, Ladner, and then there's a whole bunch of bog and nobody lives in that particular area. And then there's North Delta. So Ladner traditionally is this kind of little fishing village. The reason people like the idea of Ladner is, well, because first off, it's not Surrey and it doesn't have the bad rap of Surrey, but it is really close to the freeway and the tunnel into Richmond, and therefore quite close to getting into the airport and a whole lot closer to Vancouver. What you'll notice about living in Ladner is, well, first off, Ladner is basically behind a dike, meaning that a lot of the actual town itself is below or at sea level. Now, you may not mind that. However, that does mean that Ladner, for the most part, does not have basements. It's not really that big of an area. A lot of the homes are older, and there's not, honestly, a ton of condos or townhouses in that spot. So it's a very nicely romanticized idea. However, my experience shows me that everybody that goes and looks, not everybody, that's the wrong way to say this. The majority of people that go take a look at Ladner end up thinking that the houses are too old for the money. They're smaller lots than they would prefer, and it really doesn't give them the lifestyle that they're looking for. Second on my list, one of the most little romantic spots there is in the entire Lower Mainland, but trust me, you're not going to move there. I would actually go so far to say, as you know, on my team here, we sell upwards of 80 homes a year, and I cannot recall one property ever that I have sold in Fort Langley. So Fort Langley is a part of the township of Langley. It's a historical, old, little kind of downtown core, and it is beautiful. Now, Fort Langley used to have a ferry that ran through it to Maple Ridge. However, since the bridge was put in, that was discontinued. And now Fort Langley is generally regarded as a nice place to go for a cocktail on a summer's day patio and just hang out on a Sunday. But my experience with Fort Langley is, although it is very cute, the houses, again, are extremely old. And for the price, well, it's extremely high value for how far it is away from everything else. Now, if that's what you're looking for and you want to be away from everything else, Fort Langley could be that option. However, for the cost and for just the simple commute to get away from, say, an independent grocery store and go to something like a Walmart, it's actually quite some way. And again, getting back to price, as soon as I actually take clients out there and they see what they can get for their money in Fort Langley compared to the exact same type of property almost anywhere else in North Delta, Surrey, or Langley, they end up elsewhere pretty quickly. Next on my list, and well, this one's probably going to get maybe the most hate out of anybody, but that's okay. It's Port Moody. Port Moody is, again, a beautiful, historic, little tucked away spot down here by the water. It's a great space to launch your boat into the ocean. You can take that boat all the way in and around Vancouver and out into the Gulf Islands if you want. However, the actual reality of living in Port Moody is a couple things. First, it for sure will give you that kind of West Coast feel that you're looking for because, again, you are so close to the inlet. You can very easily get up into trails and hiking and mountain and all that stuff. However, for commute day to day to get in and out of Port Moody, it's not easy. It's got better just recently with having the addition of SkyTrain in such a small community, but it is just that. It's a very small community that's not easy to get in and out of. And this is going to sound a little bit strange, but one of the biggest holdbacks for people when they go to Port Moody is how much cloudier and rainier it is than a lot of the rest of the Lower Mainland. You see, as I back out here a little bit, you'll notice that all this green space up here, that's all mountains. And just with the natural landscape of the Lower Mainland, the weather comes in off of the ocean and it lines up or just stacks up. All those clouds stack up against the mountains here. And, well, an area like Port Moody gets a whole lot of rain, and it actually shows on their construction when you're looking at a lot of properties there, because you will see things like moss growth more there than in other spots. It does have two ways in and out, which is nice. You can go out through Coquitlam or you can go out through the Burquitlam border. However, it is one of the spots for sure on my list that people would love to move to, but rarely do. Fourth on my list is an area that I service quite often, but again, it makes the list, and that is White Rock. Now, people often construe White Rock itself and South Surrey. Now, I'm talking about White Rock, the city. So this is up to 16th Avenue and basically lower, almost down to the border. It is a very small city, and what people don't realize when they get into White Rock is a few things. First of all, a lot of, we kind of jokingly say, white hair, White Rock. It is a lot of retirement folks moving into that area, but then they say they want to live on the flat part of White Rock, and it is a slope. White Rock, the city, is a slope that slopes down to the ocean, so there's very little flat space. So if you are a senior that's moving in that area, you have to go right up near the top of White Rock, almost into Surrey, in order to get something that's a little bit more walkable. Now, condos that are in White Rock range in two different ways. One, extremely old and in a need of a lot of repair, a lot of 55 plus complexes, a lot of no pets for some reason. And then on the other side of it, you've got luxury high-rise condos that are outside of most people's budget. And then when you get into the detached homes, people don't realize that White Rock itself was at one point just basically a vacation property for people in Vancouver. So it was a beach town. The lots are really small and, well, they have almost cabin style little bungalows on them a lot of the time. And they can date back to as much as 100 years old or more. Or those properties have been torn down and now you end up with some mansion that, well, you probably can't afford either. And that is why so many people end up going north into South Surrey, and then those people say that they live in White Rock, but they don't, again, proving that you're probably going to move to Surrey. And last on my list, trust me, this is for sure number one. This is for sure where everyone says they want to move, but then don't end up doing it. And that is New Westminster. Now, New Westminster is a beautiful and very historic little town. It was actually the capital of British Columbia before the capital was moved to Victoria. Again, something that is to consider here is just the slope. The hills in New Westminster are no joke at all. And if you just cross the river into Surrey here, you can see this is Surrey on the other side. If you cross the river into Surrey, your price point drops dramatically. Another thing I've noticed in New West is that when you get down to the market area, to where the quay is and all that, you do have train tracks to contend with. So a lot of the condos with the nicest river views are really, really loud. And then when you get into the housing, again, you've got the expense as one thing. But a lot of the houses built in New Westminster are more than 100 years old now. And it's my experience when people move to these styles of homes, they don't want to deal with things like asbestos and knob and tube wiring. So when I show someone a house in New West, they realize they can get a lot more for their money in an area like maybe North Delta or Guildford here in Surrey, and they end up in those spots. And one more thing I want to warn you about in New West, specifically along the river, their condos were constructed in a time that was prime height of the leaky condo situation here in BC. And unfortunately, a bunch of those condos were in really, really bad shape, and many of them have not yet even been remedied. Now, uptown, that might be a little different argument. However, my experience is that everybody romanticizes the once capital of British Columbia that is New Westminster, but they don't end up there. I'd be interested to know if you have something on your list of places that people kind of romanticize, but then don't actually end up moving to. Well, because they have to go ahead and live their life, and they can't just live in a nice little historic village and, I don't know, spend their times in art studios and coffee shops. Thank you so much for watching. If you are thinking about looking at the Lower Mainland and you need help, well, you can book a call with me using the link in the description below. Thank you so much for subscribing, clicking the like button, and we'll see you in a couple of days.